So hello everyone and welcome to the BlazeMaster webinar series. My name is Lainey Leota and I am the Fire Protection Market Manager at Lubrizol. I'm here with some very familiar faces to many of you, my colleagues Sean Pierce and Paul Winstead, and today we have a very special guest from Viking, Darren Palmieri. So today our panelists are going to talk about using BlazeMaster in specific or special applications. We'll be addressing Addix, unfinished basements, the specific exception for BlazeMaster and ordinary hazard occupancies, passive purge systems, low pressure dry systems, interstitial spaces, port in place concrete, and more. But if you have any other specific applications you'd like to know about and you'd like us to discuss, please put them into the Q&A.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean Pierce. I'm the Fire Protection Business Development Manager here at Lubrizol. My history in the fire life safety world is with Toronto Fire Services, the Government of Ontario, the sprinkler industry in Canada, and now here with Lubrizol.
Hey, I'm Paul Winstead. I'm in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I'm the Southeast Territory Manager. I cover pretty much the Southeast. I was a sprinkler contractor for over 30 years before joining the Lubrizol Corporation. And so, if you got any questions for me, put them in the chat. I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Darren Palmieri with Viking. I'm the product manager for CPVC, obviously, but also residential sprinklers and some specific application sprinklers. And been around the industry, been around CPVC for about over 15 years now. So it's been a while, and appreciate Lubrizol allowing me to be a part of this. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining. And thank you to all of you for being panelists today. So the first specific application we want to talk about is Addix. And I think because Viking manufactures both BlazeMaster CPVC and Addix sprinklers, this topic would probably be perfect for you, Darren. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about BlazeMaster with specific application Addix sprinklers, right? So these are the sprinklers like the back-to-back sprinklers and the single directional sprinklers, and those other special sprinklers when we're talking about protecting concealed Addix spaces. So not the use of standard spray uprights in Addix per NFPA 13, right? So this would be, using such as Viking's specific application Addix sprinklers, where we would go to our data sheet and learn how to use them and learn how to apply these sprinklers. That's where the allowance for CPVC in Addix is. So it's with specific application sprinklers. It's not with with the standard spray upright commercial sprinklers, right? So it's just with specific application sprinklers. And there's two specific areas where when we talk about utilizing CPVC with specific application Addix sprinklers. One is when we utilize specific application sprinklers, we can actually feed them with CPVC in wet systems. Okay, wet systems only. The other, and we can talk about both, but the other allowance for CPVC when using specific application Addix sprinklers is the ability to use CPVC to feed the sprinklers on the floor below the attic, right? So imagine you got this concealed attic space that needs to be protected per NFPA 13, right? So we are in the protection of attics when we get into NFPA 13. Sometimes we see attics needing to be sprinklered in like NFPA 13R, but that's usually in addition to, the code or the standard based on like a local change or a local addition. But for the most part, we're in NFPA 13 where we have to protect these concealed attic spaces. So the second allowance is, so you got this attic protected with specific application Addix sprinklers, but you also have the floor below. So say you're an apartment building and you have apartment units right below the attic. When you utilize specific application Addix sprinklers, you can feed the sprinklers protecting the floor below with CPVC. Okay, if you're protecting the attic space with standard spray uprights, and steel pipe, that would be a requirement if you went to NFPA to use steel pipe in that concealed exposed attic. You would have to also use steel pipe to feed the sprinklers on the floor below. So it's kind of one of those overlooked advantages to using specific application sprinklers to protect attics, is it gives you the ability to maintain CPVC to feed the whole, all the occupied parts of those buildings too, right? And typically in an apartment building or a condo or a dormitory where we would be protecting those attics, we would be using CPVC in the occupied floors, right? That would be a typical application in a wood frame building for sure. So those are the two allowances for CPVC. One, wet systems, you can actually feed the sprinklers themselves, the back-to-backs and the single directionals and the attic upright sprinklers, you could feed those sprinklers with CPVC. And two, you can also feed the sprinklers that are protecting the floor below with CPVC. So those are things that sometimes get overlooked. And I know when we talk about attics in most of the country, we're looking at dry systems. So that would have to be a steel pipe system if it was dry. But there are more and more applications for wet attics, right? Including just those warm areas that don't freeze. Now potentially using a listed antifreeze to have a wet attic system. And then also there's definitely some interest and more attics that are being semi-conditioned, let's say, to be kept above 40 degrees, right, through insulation. So we're seeing more wet attics than we've seen in the past for sure.
Great, thanks, Darren. So those are some really good, that's really good information. Paul, in your days as a contractor, can you kind of tell us what are some of the advantages or disadvantages of using CPVC versus steel in an attic space?
Well, Laney, just piggybacking off of what the information Darren just gave us, and being able to use Viking BlazeMaster in an attic application with these special listed sprinkler heads is a great advantage to the sprinkler contractor. First of all, when you're dealing with Viking BlazeMaster, you're dealing with a material that's much lighter than steel. Also, you're going to save on design time because you're not going through the fabrication. You're not sending a designer up there to have to measure and design and cut and come back and do listing sheets to send it to the fab just to be sent to the attic. And good and well, it may not even work. So being able to use Viking BlazeMaster is a major advantage to being able, especially with these special listed sprinkler heads that Viking has. And Darren really hit on it there. I want to challenge these designers out there with these sprinkler contractors, start looking for more opportunities to use Viking BlazeMaster in your attic systems. They've got the heads for it. We got the calculations for it. It's a perfect fit. Guys, start looking at it. If you got any questions about it, always reach out to me. I'll get back with you on it.
Yeah, for those that have been around, and they've looked at attics different ways, like you have, Paul, take a 60-foot span attic. Potentially, with specific application sprinklers, you could protect that with a single line of back-to-back sprinklers.
Right.
With the current NFPA requirements, if you were using standard spray uprights, you'd be looking at up to 5 branch lines in that attic. So,
right.
For those who've been up in attics, and I'm sure you have, Paul, there's a lot of framing up there. There's a lot of obstructions. It's a hard place to work in for a sprinkler fitter. As it slopes down towards the eave, it becomes very shallow. It's a really difficult, challenging place to run pipe in. So it is a big difference when you can run one line of pipe as opposed to 5 to cover that same space.
Too, Darren, that's going to save you in labor hours, and that's also going to save you in material. And you know what? There's a lot of, if there's anybody listening out there who's been up in an attic in July and August, especially in the South, that's not a place you want to be. It's quite warm up there.
Very true. So let's move down a few floors and talk about basements now, and specifically unfinished basements. Sean, can you tell us a bit about what are BlazeMaster's listings for unfinished basements?
Sure, thanks, Lainey. So unfinished basements in 1 and 2 family homes are becoming more prevalent as we see sprinkler ordinances across the U.S. and in various parts of Canada. There is a difference between BlazeMaster and the competitor's pipe, so it's important to recognize that if the pipe, in the case of Viking, doesn't say Viking BlazeMaster on it, if it has any other name other than BlazeMaster, it's not BlazeMaster, and the core material is different. And so, with that being said, the listings are different. So BlazeMaster pipe has the ability to be run parallel and perpendicular,
Hey,
which is
Sean,
unique.
I think you glitched real quick. You might want to repeat what you just said in the past 10 seconds.
Sure. So BlazeMaster pipe has the ability to be run parallel and perpendicular in exposed basements, which is unique to BlazeMaster. It has the ability to be used with solid wood and composite wood joists to a nominal depth of 16 inches or less on a maximum of 24-inch centers, which is unique to BlazeMaster as well. The distance from the bottom of the joist to the floor shall be between 7 and 10 feet. And the maximum length along the joist, so this is before you have to put some form of a draft stop it's called blocking in the listing, but ultimately it's a draft stop, is 40 feet, and the competitor's pipe is 32. Because our compounds are different and our pipe is stronger, we're able to achieve these higher performance levels. One of the other things to take into consideration with BlazeMaster is you're not limited to 1,000 square foot for exposed, whereas with our competitor's pipe, you have to compartmentalize the basement into 1,000 square foot areas, which isn't the case with BlazeMaster. If when we look at how this all kind of comes into play, blocking is something that it's a carpentry job. It's an additional cost. With BlazeMaster, you don't have to manage that cost. 40 feet in your typical home is more than enough to not have to block a basement at all. If you're in a very large basement, then the room will probably be compartmentalized anyway. But that's a huge advantage for sure, not having to deal with get the carpenters involved in your sprinkler installations. The parallel and perpendicular makes it so much easier to run your pipe. You're not forced to only run in one direction. You fundamentally can run the pipe in any way that is the easiest to run, which your builder is going to appreciate as well, because you can tuck pipe up in between joist spaces where you're not going to interfere with a finished drywall ceiling in the future. Our head spacing is unique as well to us. We're 16 by 16. The competitor is 16 by 14. And so theoretically, depending on the size of your basement, you could be looking at a reduction in the number of heads you install, which is a cost savings to the builder, but gives you an advantage as an installer with your pricing also. So it's important to go back to your installation guide, use the Viking install guide for BlazeMaster, refer to it, remember it's unique to BlazeMaster. And if you for whatever reason, use some other component where listings are different, you have to default to the lower listing. So you want to try, Viking's got amazing new gasketed head adapters, which work great in this application. If you haven't used them yet, take the opportunity to try and use their new gasketed head adapter when you're doing a basement. It's going to save you time and money. But the most important thing I could share, you're not going to remember all of those items I just gave you, but refer back to that Viking install guide. Use the gasketed head adapter that Viking's got on the market right now. It's going to give you a big advantage in installing in basements exposed.
And then we get a lot of questions about open web joists as the price of timber becomes, more and more, or rises more and more. Can you tell us how to deal with open web joists in unfinished basements?
So open web joists are a unique challenge. They're definitely becoming more prevalent. They are listing currently, and that's one thing to really remember, and it's why we do training and ask you to renew your training every 2 years, is because we're constantly working at upgrading our listings. But in the situation, in case of open web joists, we don't have a specific listing. If you have an engineer that's prepared to do a design for you that they're comfortable stamping, you can install BlazeMaster in an open web setting using that design. But for right now, we don't have a listing for it. In that situation, without an engineer's design, you'd probably have to default back to steel right now. But Lainey might be able to tell you about some of the work we're doing. But we are definitely working to address open web joists right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sean. This will date me a little bit, but even the composite wood joists are still relatively new for a lot of people with utilizing CPVC. For a long time, you could only utilize CPVC with solid wood joists.
Correct.
So it's only in the last few years that we really got into having the listing with the composite wood joists, the I-joists, right? So there's still some confusion out there because since the 80s up until a few years ago, basically it was limited to solid wood. So that really limited the application of BlazeMaster in basements. But as soon as it opened up to the composite wood joists, which are, at least here where I am in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, it's still the most commonly used joist type in single family. That opened up the use of BlazeMaster in a big way, just getting the composite wood joist. And the fact that we can go up to, 16-inch composite wood joist?
Yeah, Darren, yeah, you're right. So for BlazeMaster, there's no difference in the installation between composite wood and solid wood joists. For our competitors, you have to really read their install guide because it is different. But yeah, we've upgraded our composite wood joist to make it the same as our solid wood installation. So yeah, Viking BlazeMaster is a great option. Again, I can't stress enough, if you haven't started using gasketed head adapters, they are the best thing since sliced bread, and in my mind, one of the best innovations for 1 and 2 family homes. And Viking's product is a very sturdy, reliable sprinkler head adapter. So if you haven't had a chance to check them out, please do.
Oh, they're going to save you some labor, Sean, too, and so you can get all those frames completely lined straight. It's a really nice 1x1 RC. Yes, sir.
There was a question that came to me privately, but it asked about, does the same of what Sean you had described initially, does that apply to unfinished riser rooms?
So risers have a very different listing in the install guide. Depending on the application, so in a 13 you'd have to be concealed, and 13R there are ways to leave the pipe exposed, and we did pass UL for exposed risers. In a 1 and 2 family home in a 13D application, you have to be 1.5 inches off of the wall with a sprinkler head within 12 inches of the riser to protect the riser, and that sprinkler head does not factor in to the calculations of the space that you're protecting. 13R is a little similar. You can expose or conceal it using the exposed rules, but the trick with risers is make sure you check with the install guide, make sure you understand your occupancy and which NFPA standard you're using, because the listings are different.
Thanks, Sean. All right, let's move on to interstitial spaces or combustible concealed spaces. Darren, you want to take this one as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lainey. So when we talk about these spaces, it kind of goes back a little bit to what we just talked about with Addix, similar type application. So, when we talk about protecting these spaces with specific application sprinklers, specifically when we get into Viking, we're talking about using our coin sprinklers, which are our interstitial space sprinklers. These are specific application just for these areas. And when we're talking about these interstitial spaces, we're talking about the horizontal combustible concealed spaces between floors, right? And potentially at the top floor. So at a low sloped roof, right? Where you would have an application was either a flat roof or up to a 2/12 type situation, up to 212, that would be considered flat. That would be the application for these combustible concealed space or interstitial space sprinklers. And we have a couple of them at Viking. And you can, when you use these sprinklers, just like with specific application Addix sprinklers, you can use BlazeMaster, you can use CPVC to feed these sprinklers, right? So that's an allowance you get when you start utilizing these specific application sprinklers. So, there's a lot of, when you get into these data sheets, and that's one thing I will point out when we talk about specific application sprinklers, you got to dig into the data sheets. That's the Bible for these things, right? So you learn how to design with them, calculate them, install them. It's all in the data sheets. So it's a little bit different than going just to NFPA and learning how to protect a space. When you're using a specific application type sprinkler, the data sheet really becomes everything. But one thing I will point out is that we do have a new listing on our VK950, which is our 5.6K coin sprinkler, that allows you to omit draft curtains. Sean talked about blocking or draft curtains when he was talking about basements. But when we're in these interstitial spaces, there has traditionally been also a draft curtain requirement to utilize these sprinklers. Mostly about 1,000 square feet, right? Every 1,000 square feet, typically you would have to put in these draft curtains or baffles. But with the VK950, under a lot of the common construction types, you can actually omit the draft curtains, which is a really great thing with our sprinkler. Ends up saving a lot of coordination, saves money, saves time, etc. And like I said, you can use these sprinklers, you can use BlazeMaster to feed these sprinklers in those spaces. And you have to look at the detail. So you have to run the piping low in those interstitial spaces and sprig up to catch the sprinklers. So there's a lot of detail in them, but it shows you exactly how, our data sheet shows you exactly how to run the pipe, how to run it around obstructions, how to also rise up in that area, because there is an allowance to use CPVC as a riser in the interstitial space to go through there, as long as it's protected by an inch of non-combustible insulation, and we show that now in a detail in our data sheet. So it's just another place where, instead of having to constantly transition back and forth between CPVC for the occupied spaces and steel or other metallic pipe for the unoccupied spaces, when you utilize these specific application sprinklers, you can maintain that whole CPVC system, right? You can keep using CPVC instead of having to transition back and forth. So utilizing these sprinklers give you a lot of benefits, and one of them is the use of BlazeMaster and maintaining the use of BlazeMaster throughout a building.
Elaine, the advantages and Darren, the advantages to the sprinkler contractor and also to the general contractor is he doesn't have to install these draft curtains every 1,000 square feet. Because if you're using this Viking VK950 head, you don't need the draft curtain. So as far as in a sprinkler design, when you're trying to space off a solid, that's how sprinkler heads are done. You space off a solid wall or off a draft curtain. Without that draft curtain, you can continue that design across that interstitial space. This is a fantastic head. I was looking at the tech data sheet on. I told Darren earlier, man, if this had been around 10 years ago, I would have bought thousands of them, because right now we're looking at multifamily dormitories, especially with these new construction projects where you have this interstitial space. This is a fantastic head. And you can use the Viking BlazeMaster. It's listed for Viking BlazeMaster pipe. It's really a good design. Sean had mentioned something earlier, talking about when he went back to unfinished basements, he was talking about a 16 by 16 head spacing there, where he said talking about the competition was a 16 by 14. So if you're spacing a head in a 16 by 16, we're talking about one Viking head, okay? One Viking head in a 16 by 16. If you're talking about a 16 by 14, for the other manufacturer, a 16 by 16 would take two sprinkler heads. So it's very important to go back and look at these tech data sheets, read these tech data sheets. There's a lot of good information in there, and especially that you can use it with the Viking BlazeMaster pipe.
Thanks, guys. The next one I want to get to is probably a welcomed change for a lot of you, especially those in California with a lot of 13R and 13D work, and other places in the country, I guess not just California. But talking about the ordinary hazard exception and otherwise light hazard occupancies. Who wants to take that one?
We can all jump in, I guess. I mean, I'll start it out. I mean, this is an interesting one. So, yeah, you mentioned it, Lainey. This is an exception for ordinary hazard rooms or spaces within otherwise light hazard occupancies, right? So let's keep it kind of easy and think about a laundry room in a hotel or a dormitory, right? In most of the spaces in a hotel or a dormitory, it's going to be a light hazard occupancy with residential type units, hallways which are light hazard, but then you have a laundry room which is considered ordinary hazard. So depending on the size of that space, you might have had to in the past done a transition of sorts, transition from CPVC, which is the most common material used in light hazard, wood frame light hazard, to some type of metallic pipe to go through that ordinary hazard space, because the maximum allowed space was always 400 square feet, right? So if you went over 400 square feet, even by a foot, 2 feet, you had a transition. So the allowances have been upped now in both NFPA 13R and 13 for the upcoming editions of NFPA, right? So now you can go up to, you can use CPVC exposed up to 800 square feet. If you go concealed, you can go over 800 square feet. And this opens up lots of new opportunities for folks to not have to get into that struggle of transitioning materials, right? We dealt with it for years in private garages that are attached to 13 applications or 13R applications that were over 400 square feet. We saw garages that were 410 square feet. And now, instead of being able to utilize CPVC throughout, you had to transition because you were 10 square feet over. So it's a pretty exciting change for, it's going to be a cost savings and a time savings in a big way for the contractors who now don't have to transition to a metallic pipe.
Sean, and I'll direct this question to you. You mentioned that this is a future standard, 2022 NFPA standard. Can you bring up sort of the best practice on how to implement future standards into today's work?
Yeah, for sure, Lainey. So if many AHJs, and I'm going to start this with the caveat that the authority having jurisdiction, whether it be a fire official or a building official, depending on who does your inspections in your neck of the woods, has the final say on everything. But NFPA is written in such a way that allows for new technology, and new technology includes the introduction of new standards. So if you can reference a new standard to an AHJ and show an advancement of a product, the AHJ can then take that into consideration and fundamentally make a decision as to whether or not to accept that. Many AHJs accept new standards or components of new standards, even if their building code references older documents. So it's important, even though you may be building using NFPA 13 2016, you can always reference a new standard with your local authority and ask for the inclusion of a component of that new standard within the building you're working on. But again, it's something you want to do up front. You want to talk to your building, fire official, whomever it is, and just run it by them before you commit to anything.
Thanks, guys. Let's move on to passive purge systems and the specifics as it relates to BlazeMaster CPVC. Sean, do you want to take this one as well?
Yeah, for sure. So earlier on we talked a little bit about how BlazeMaster and the competitor's pipe are different, and fundamentally they're both orange, yes. They're both CPVC, yes. Can you solvent cement them together? Yes. However, what makes that CPVC is completely different, and our cell classifications are very unique to BlazeMaster. So we have, for our pipe, we have a cell classification of 23547, which that cell classification gives us about a 14% better tensile strength than the base requirement. Our fitting classification is 24447, which is 3 times greater than the base requirement. Our competitor's pipe meets the requirements to be used as fire protection piping for its cell classification, but they meet the minimum required of 23447. So by increasing our cell classifications and pushing the envelope, we've increased the tensile strength of our pipe, and we've increased the impact strength of our fittings, but as well, we've been able to get to a different ASTM requirement. And so the ASTM requirement that BlazeMaster meets is 412006, whereas the competitor is 412005. So the 412006 includes a test of 100 psi at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a required test in the US to be used in potable water systems. So our competitor's pipe does not have the ASTM requirement to be used in conjunction with potable water in an installation. So passive purge, partial flow through systems all connect to the domestic water supply. To do that, you need to use BlazeMaster. And whatever the local requirements are for black backflow prevention, you have to follow all of those rules as well. But the pipe itself and the fittings itself, only BlazeMaster has the ASTM of 412006, which allows the 100 psi at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the requirement for domestic water. In Canada, again, BlazeMaster is the one that meets the requirements for potable water as well. Only cold water in Canada, which is fine. We're fire protection, so we're not worried about hot water. But when you install these systems, a passive purge, you run what you would consider a typical standalone system until you get to one potable water device. Traditionally, it is the toilet in the master ensuite because it's used so often. And every time you flush that toilet, you move water through it in jurisdictions that require that allow for non-testable backflow devices when doing this. If the toilet doesn't fill, your backflow has failed, so you're really testing the backflow. Other jurisdictions allow the use of a check valve, and the toilet basically moves that, 3 gallons, whatever it is in a toilet. I'm trying to do metric conversion. I'm sorry, guys, but that small amount of water through the system, and you're constantly moving it. On a full flow through or partial flow through, you're going to move a lot more water through the system. And you'll get the various devices in the home connected to the two systems connected together, so you're moving water constantly. Again, these systems are very cost effective. They are easy to install, a lot easier than most people think. When you're working with a plumber, you basically leave takeoff points on your sprinkler system, and they'll connect the domestic water to it on a full flow through or partial flow through. On a passive purge, you come to the toilet, you leave a stainless steel nipple, or if you can solvent cement in Suchi FlowGuard Gold fitting into BlazeMaster with a toilet stop already built into it, you can do that too. The plumber comes in, connects to that toilet stop, and he's good to go. They seem complicated, but for my purposes, we're doing 15,000 homes in Alberta right now using a passive purge, and it's I think the first couple months where everybody finds their way, all the trades find their way in a 1 and 2 family home is the toughest part. 6 months into it, it just works smoothly, and generally you can use a little bit less pipe and save yourself some time and money, and that helps you when you're bidding competitively against others.
It's also a good note too, Sean, that BlazeMaster, Viking BlazeMaster, is also NSF 61.
Right.
And it's also listed for underground. So it would work perfectly.
Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
definitely.
Sorry, I was going to say with the NSF ratings, though, you have to be careful depending on what kind of head adapter you use. Some head adapters, both ours and our competitors, don't have NSF approval. So that's always something to make sure you refer to the installation guide and tech data sheets.
Good point.
Sorry, Darren, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to add on to what Sean and Paul was saying. I mean, we're seeing a lot more passive purge systems around the country. Definitely becoming more popular, certainly on the West Coast. As you get out to Oregon and Washington State, we see a lot of passive purge out there. So it's becoming a popular way to pipe the 13D systems. So having the advantages here with the cell classification is definitely a big deal for BlazeMaster. So, and I would anticipate that as we see more requirements, as we see more use of sprinkler systems in single-family dwellings and townhouses through incentives or trade-ups, that we will see more and more passive purge type systems.
Absolutely. So this next topic was actually in the Q&A. We wanted to talk about low pressure dry systems. How about Paul? You want to handle this one?
Yes. Low pressure dry systems, we've talked about that for many years. Basically, just so everyone knows, Lubrizol BlazeMaster, we're a chemical company. We're the people who invented CPVC. We sell this CPVC compound to Viking. They're the ones who extrude it into pipe, mold it into fittings. So when you're talking about a low pressure dry system, some of the criteria is, you can't exceed 15 psi or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's us saying you can't exceed 15 psi. I would always ask you to go back to the manufacturer's recommendations and manufacturer's requirements of what they will tell you as far as that is concerned. So it's a concealed application only. Dry pipe sprinklers must be designed to provide a pressure relief when the system pressure exceeds 15 psi. And as an alternative, the system may be equipped with an alarm that sounds when the pressure exceeds 15 psi. So we call that a high-low pressure switch. And another criteria of it, you must use an oil-free air compressor, but that's all part of our FBC compatibility. But if you have a porta-shade over a hotel and you need to put a dry system out there, and it's going to take about 4 pitted heads, 4 upright heads, why would you not use Viking BlazeMaster for that? It's just a little small dry system. You could do an antifreeze loop, but at the same time, I really think that a low pressure dry system in that type of application in a small Addix system where maybe it wasn't heated, but you can't use BlazeMaster in an Addix system unless you're using the specially listed Viking heads. But those are some of just the guidelines when you're talking about a low pressure dry system. There's a lot of advantages if you just look into it.
Yeah, Paul, just to kind of take off on what Paul said, remember that pre-action systems are fundamentally low pressure dry systems, and
yes,
dry systems unfortunately suffer from accelerated corrosion, right? You end up with moisture in the pipe and then air in the pipe, and that's just a recipe for corrosion. So BlazeMaster is completely impervious to corrosion, and if you're installing in a pre-action system in a high value space, whether it be a data center or a library or some kind of document storage facility, the opportunity to use BlazeMaster in that facility and not have to worry about corrosion is a big advantage. I know your customers will think about that hard if you were to offer them the fact that you could say, we have a pipe that won't corrode. You're never going to have to worry about a pinhole leak with BlazeMaster. So just think about it. I know Paul has an example even of a building like this, but when you're bidding jobs, consider the fact that we're impervious to corrosion, and in any high value space, BlazeMaster is probably going to help you win the job.
Yeah, I would say I'll just add that there's been a lot of confusion about this issue over the years, right? Because so many people will think, if they've been dealing with these systems, dealing with CPVC for 10, 20, 30 years, and they think of air and CPVC, that those are just no-nos, right?
Right.
We've been through that. You can't, we're not saying that you could test with 40 or 50 or 80 pounds of air on the system.
Right.
We're talking about low pressure dry systems, right? So, there is this kind of misconception in the market, or maybe these are leftover things that people have always thought, well, CPVC and air, that's a no-no. But these are special allowances for low pressure dry type systems, right? So these are allowed. It's in the manufacturer's handbooks, and it's a part of the listing. So putting low pressure air on CPVC is okay.
Yeah, and just from what Darren said, remember that our atmospheric pressure is like 14 pounds 6 or something like that, and we're talking about 15. So in reality, there is no pressure inside the pipe when you think about our atmospheric pressure. So
Right.
you got equal pressure on the outside of the pipe as you do on the inside of the pipe, so it negates the pressure. And as Darren said, we do not endorse the use of higher air pressures to test for leaks or anything like that. It's dangerous. I think everybody is aware of that. But when you talk about a pre-action system, really you only have 14, 15 pounds of air in there as a supervisory air to
Right.
trip an alarm. It's not holding a valve closed or anything else. So it's pretty easy to use it in that type of application.
Exactly. And, Sean and Darren, just to speak on behalf of Lubrizol and speak on behalf, feel free to speak on behalf of Viking. The reason why we talk about why we don't talk about putting a lot of air pressure in plastic pipe, if you look at it, if you take a balloon, and you fill a balloon up full of water, like a water balloon, and you poke it with a pin, the water just falls out and hits the ground, right? You take that balloon, you blow it up, fill it full of air, and you poke it with a pin, it's going to explode. That's exactly what's going to happen with plastic pipe filled with excessive amounts of air. You will hurt yourself. You can possibly kill yourself or hurt and kill someone else. So I just want to put it out there to people. I was a contractor for over 30 years. I've seen some really dangerous things, and that was one of them. So again, if you're questioning yourself, do not exceed air pressure on this Viking BlazeMaster pipe. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get someone else hurt. So listen to what we're telling you here. It's a low pressure dry system, 15 psi. Check with the manufacturer, and everything will be good.
Excuse me. Great, guys. Thank you very much. The last one that we have on our list here is embed in concrete. Sean, I know a lot of concrete buildings are built in Canada, so how about you take this one?
Sorry, mute button. So thanks, Lainey. So you can absolutely embed BlazeMaster in cast-in-place concrete. You cannot use it in post-tension. And I know post-tension is much more popular in the US than it is in Canada. So we've already seen applications where this has been installed here in Canada, and we get questions about it all the time. It can be really difficult for a contractor to wrap their head around doing this. There's this fear that what if I have a leak, or what if something goes wrong? What am I going to do? How am I going to fix it? And so it's really the constructor side of the business that's driving this. Property developers are looking at embedded in concrete as a way to eliminate bulkheads. In an average high-rise building, it can save them, almost $500,000 in carpentry costs and drywall costs by not having bulkheads. And so, embedded in concrete has been around for a very long time. In the Netherlands, Norway, and different parts of Europe, it's very common. In various parts of Asia and Southeast Asia, it's very common. So it's not that it hasn't been done before, it's just new to us here in the North American market. There are some rules when you embed pipe in concrete. You need to have a cup, and we've partnered with a company called ProSet. This is a cup with a chemically compatible gasket on the top of it. Your sprinkler head would come in the bottom. This cap would come off with the form. You basically put a screw through it into the form below to hold it in place during the pour process. it's a great piece. It works really well. We, early on we struggled to figure out how to do this, but ProSet has come through for us. The other transition is, in many cases, people will embed the pipe in a suite alone and still ring their riser up into the corridor and punch through into the suites in the bathrooms of these condos, which generally has a drop ceiling for mechanical space. ProSet has this transition cup as well. It's much larger. These inserts that they have here, they're very soft and pliable. So remember that once the pipe is inside the slab, it's not susceptible to expansion and contraction. It'll move with the slab with no issue. The pipe that comes out of the bottom of this transition fitting and then into airspace is susceptible to expansion and contraction because the temperatures are going to vary when it's hanging in the air, and that rubberized gasket will allow the pipe to move back and forth and take up some of that expansion and contraction without cracking it against the slab. So, we've advanced with our partners at ProSet, and Vikings added it to their installation guide for embedded in concrete. It is a unique installation. If you get asked about it, we're here to support you. We'll have people on site with you to help you. There's a number of other rules you have to think about. It is very front-end loaded labor. It's very different from what a sprinkler contractor is accustomed to. Traditionally, you are in after the concrete forms are pulled off and you're hanging pipe and putting SAMIs up or whatever the case is to hang your pipe, going through steel studded walls or something like that. In this situation, in the case of the jobs I've seen so far, they actually prefab each suite in a heated space in the underground garage of the condo and fly a whole floor up with the crane, and they're only on the working space of the deck for about 3 hours. So you don't slow down that pour process. You put all your transition cups in place, you drop in all of your settings. You have to be better with using things like CAD and Revit, because you really have to plan out where everything's going to go. It seems complicated, but once the forms go off, you just go back and put heads in, or you just take caps off, or you put plates on. There's nothing that you really have to do after the fact inside each suite. So your labor shifts, and it's important to understand that there is that labor shift when you go to embedded in concrete. Choosing a sprinkler head is really important. I think Darren can better speak to the sprinkler heads that can be used, but traditionally it's a semi-recessed head if you want something with a plate on it, or an exposed head. I'm not aware of any concealed heads that allow for embedded in concrete right now, but I'll let Darren build on that.
Yeah, I mean, typically you'd be looking at a frame style, or even a flush if you're looking for something more aesthetic, a flush style sprinkler, something that has the element, the sprinkler element, the operating element on the exterior, right? So, a traditional concealed type sprinkler, the element is actually up within the ceiling space behind a cover plate. So we'd be looking at using a sprinkler that has an element on the outside, such as a fixed frame type sprinkler, semi-recessed, or some type of flush style sprinkler. I mean, Sean, I'll bring this up. We get questions when we do get questions about this, because compatibility is always a top of mind with a lot of contractors and folks that deal with BlazeMaster and CPVC. They ask about compatibility with concrete. How do we address that?
Yeah, so our team has gone to great lengths to examine the materials in concrete, and we've found that there's nothing, our FPC program and our engineering team has found there's nothing in concrete that is chemically incompatible with BlazeMaster CPVC. So we've heard the same questions. We've now seen some jobs done, and we're not seeing any issues. The other component of compatibility, one of our attendees just asked a question about how to attach the pipe to the rebar, and you have to use a compatible material, as Darren brought up. And if you use a proper zip tie, a nylon zip tie, not a cheap zip tie, but one that's compatible with CPVC, you really basic, straightforward. You zip tie the BlazeMaster pipe to the rebar to give it its strength, and to protect it as well, because there's always people. I mean, there's this big concern about the guys pouring that deck, they're just going to walk all over that pipe. Well, if you zip tie the pipe to the underside of the second layer of rebar, you've protected it from above. And when they're walking and stepping, they're going to step on the rebar before they step on the pipe. So there's that option as well. But please, if you're going to get into this, check the FBC website, call a territory manager, reach out to Viking, somebody on Darren's team. Between all of us, we can help you get through this with very little aggravation, because I know everybody wants to avoid aggravation when installing sprinkler systems.
Sean, is there something that you could put in the chat where they could go and view some of these projects that maybe you've been involved with up in Canada?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have images that we can share with people of the pipe going in. We've got finished images that we can share. There's lots of things we can do to help people do that. But I think it was an attendee just talked about the oil on the ties. Yeah, there is always that question of the oil or the releasing oil on the deck. The pipe really doesn't touch the deck. The cups do. But the pipe itself doesn't touch the deck, so we don't have to worry about that releasing oil. And if if you have an issue with the wire ties, I mean, that's something that we'd have to look at and address from a compatibility standpoint. Most materials used to treat pipe or rebar are compatible. It's part of the FM Global requirement for steel pipe used in sprinkler. So there's a lot of material that is compatible in that kind of field. It's just something you have to look at job by job and make sure you're taking into consideration.
And how do you deal with repairs, Sean?
Well, so repairs are absolutely a challenge. Or, if you've pressure tested each suite and dropped it on the deck and it's holding pressure during the installation, you should never have to repair. If you have somebody who moves into a condo and wants to add a wall or change the layout of that space, you're going to have to come down from one of your head adapters into a wall and use a sidewall head or something to change the layout of that application. It's really not practical to chip out the pipe to relocate a head or to do a repair. It's easier to, in these situations, you'd have to abandon a section of it and or use it as a feed to another sprinkler head somewhere.
Great, thank you. So we have about 5 minutes left for questions. If you have questions, put them into the Q&A section, please. And if we don't get to them, we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards, either someone from Lubrizol or from Viking, but we'll get to what we can. One question was, are there limitations for running BlazeMaster in the space above the bathrooms or cabinets that aren't sprinklered in accordance with NFPA 13D or R? Stump everyone.
I don't know of any limitations above the ceiling in a bathroom in 13D and 13R if we're talking non-combustible.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a concealed installation, so the pipe is you can pretty much run it any way you want, is because it's protected from the space below by 1/2-inch plywood or 3H gyprock or drywall, whatever you call it in your area. Remember that drop-in ceiling tiles are also considered concealment, but they have to meet a minimum weight requirement.
435 per square foot.
Yeah, so just double check with your install guide to make sure you're meeting all the requirements of the listing.
Right.
All right, another question is, what separates a riser from a vertical rise up, or are they the same?
So they're very similar in the eyes of UL and should be treated the same way. So you'd have to conceal them in 13 to protect them from the space. If you have a sprinkler head within 12 inches of a rise up feeding another floor rather than specifically a riser from a valve, you're going to be okay to leave it exposed as long as you follow all of the requirements within the install guide from, check Viking's install guide for more information.
Right, because Darren had mentioned earlier about he was talking about the diagrams for the VK950 and the one that has the 1-inch insulation around it, where it's going from the interstitial space up into to feed the floor above. I've had authority having jurisdictions, fire marshals question above the deflector, that distance of pipe above that deflector is not being protected going into that floor above. And I'm assuming, Darren, that's probably why one of the reasons why they required that 1-inch insulation around that piece of pipe. Am I on the right track there?
Right, because there is a requirement to run the sprinkler, the BlazeMaster low, right, within 6 inches from the ceiling, or a third, whichever is smaller. So yeah, the idea of running pipe all the way through that space, right? Essentially, that top part of it would be unprotected by a sprinkler right above the deflector, like you're saying. That's always been the question, right? So the options are to, transition the steel to run all the way through, which you can do, or continue with the CPVC, but just wrap it with non-combustible insulation, which obviously is a much more simple installation process there for sure.
Yes.
Great. And last question, I think goes back to the embedding concrete listing. How do you deal with antifreeze mixtures for concrete during cold weather? I don't know if that's the question is, how do you can you install an antifreeze system embedded in concrete?
Yeah, it wouldn't be treated any differently, Lainey. I'm reading the question now, trying to see if I understand it better, but I don't. I mean, as long as you're using an antifreeze that's compatible with BlazeMaster, you're fine. The listed products, especially our FreezeMaster that Viking sells, is completely compatible with Viking BlazeMaster, so you're free to use that. I know there was a comment earlier in the chat line about how expensive listed antifreeze is. It is a very different product than any other antifreeze that's ever been on the market. It meets not just fire performance, but it meets about 20 other tests to make it a listed product. So it is very unique in many ways, not just fire performance. So and testing it is different than before. There's a lot of factors you need to take into consideration. But as long as that antifreeze is compatible, running antifreeze through a BlazeMaster system embedded in concrete won't be an issue.
All right, and one last question. Are there any exceptions to the horizontal flat ceiling rule when running CPVC exposed?
Is there any exceptions to that? Is that what the question is, Lainey? Sean, I don't know of any exception. I don't know of any exceptions to that, to the flat, to the flat horizontal ceiling, as far as running exposed BlazeMaster. I mean, that's how it was listed, with a flat horizontal ceiling.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. One other, Sean, do you want to tell them about, since we were on the topic of antifreeze, our new FreezeMaster's new ordinary hazard listing?
Yeah, for sure. So we just finished some testing in conjunction with our partners at Viking, and ordinary hazard for listed antifreeze products was limited to 40 gallons. And currently only FreezeMaster, the Viking Lubrizol FreezeMaster product, for ordinary hazard group 1 and 2, that listing has been expanded to 375 gallons. So that, we understand what everybody's going through with listed antifreeze and how different it is from the way things have been done in the past. And we're trying to help contractors meet the needs of the market. And We just, when I say just, less than a month ago, finished our testing, and UL has published our new tech sheet in conjunction with us, and it's now 375 gallons, ordinary hazard, group 1 and 2.
Wow.
For BlazeMaster.
It's good.
It's big news.
Laney, with we're at the end of August, coming into the 1st of September next week. If there's sprinkler contractors out there are planning their service for their antifreeze loops going into the fall of the year, I suggest they get on the phone with their Viking supply net and see about when they can get some of that BlazeMaster on order. They need to, don't wait till the last minute. Let's get this stuff ordered and get it. Viking supply net's got it. Go ahead and start scheduling your antifreeze inspections before it gets too cold.
Absolutely. So it looks like we're 1 minute over, so we're going to have to end here. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. And again, thank you to our wonderful panelists. Like I mentioned at the beginning, a recording of this webinar will be sent out to all registrants and attendees early next week. And we'll be sure to follow up with you if you have a question that wasn't answered. Also, make sure you're on the lookout for the announcement of our 4th quarter webinar, because we should be announcing the date of that within the next month or so. See you soon.